Before the fame, before the endorsements, and before the millions, who really were these NBA stars? Were they always destined for greatness, or did some come out of nowhere and shock the world? Because here's the truth, not every NBA legend was a 5-star recruit with the world watching. Some were overlooked, others already turning heads before they could even drive a cars were doubted, and a few, they were. Today, we're diving into the untold stories of NBA stars before the fame, how good they actually were in high school, and what most people never knew about their rise. Let's start with a name you've definitely heard, but probably never knew just how dominant he was as a teenager. Before Wilt Chamberlain became the man who once dropped 100 points in a single NBA game, he was already rewriting history books as a teenager. At Overbrook High School in Philadelphia, Wilt wasn't just tall, he was a 6'11" wrecking ball with coordination, agility, and speed that defied his size. He moved like a guard, jumped like a track star, and dominated like no one had ever seen at the high school level. Over 3 varsity seasons, Wilt piled up 2,252 points, averaging nearly 38 points per game, without the three-point line or the modern shot clock. Opposing teams were left hopeless. In one game against Roxborough High, he casually dropped 90 points. And no, that's not a typo. Fans showed up just to witness the spectacle. Coaches tried everything to slow him down. Double teams, triple teams, stalling the clock, but nothing worked. Wilt was simply too much. But basketball wasn't his only stage. Chamberlain was a gifted track and field athlete as well. He ran the 440 in 49 seconds, triple jumped over 50 feet, and high jumped 6 feet 6 inches, all while being nearly 7 feet tall. He even broad jumped over 22 feet. That kind of athleticism in a man of his size was unheard of. His dominance was so extreme that local newspapers covered his every move, and college recruiters lined up around the block. Some schools even offered to build new facilities just to convince him to join. The buzz around young Wilt was so massive that he became a national sports sensation before he'd even played a minute of college ball. But as we'll see next, not every NBA star had that kind of head start. Unlike Wilt Chamberlain, Jimmy Butler didn't have cameras following him around in high school. In fact, barely anyone knew his name. He wasn't ranked nationally, wasn't getting major D1 offers, and didn't come from a stable background. Butler grew up in Tomball, Texas, and by the age of 13, he was on his own, bounced between friends' homes and facing uncertainty most kids never experience. In high school, he didn't put up flashy numbers. He wasn't dunking on people or going viral. At best, he was considered solid. When he graduated, he was ranked 1,253rd in the country. That's not a typo. Over 1,000 players were ranked ahead of him. But that's where the story really starts. Jimmy didn't quit. He enrolled at Tyler Junior College, a place most NBA hopefuls never even consider. There, he played like his life depended on it. In one season, he went from being overlooked to turning heads. Marquette University took notice and gave him a shot, and Butler made the most of it. By his senior year, he was leading the team in scoring, but even then, scouts weren't sure he was NBA material. He didn't care. What he lacked in hype, he made up for in heart. That same kid who slept on couches and played in near-empty gyms eventually became a 5-time NBA All-Star, an Olympic gold medalist, and the fearless leader of a finals-bound Miami Heat squad. And through it all, he never forgot where he started. But Jimmy wasn't the only one who rose from the shadows. Up next is someone who had the exact opposite path. He was crowned the chosen one before he ever stepped on an NBA court. LeBron James wasn't just good in high school, he was a national event. By his sophomore year at St. Vincent Street Mary High School in Akron, Ohio, LeBron's games were drawing crowds so large they had to move them to the University of Akron's arena. ESPN broadcasted his games. NBA scouts were in the bleachers, and he wasn't even old enough to vote. Nicknamed the Chosen One by Sports Illustrated at just 17, LeBron lived under a spotlight most pros would find unbearable. But instead of cracking under pressure, he thrived. His stats? Ridiculous. He averaged 30 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists as a senior, all while facing constant double and triple teams. He led his team to 3 state titles and was named Gatorade National Player of the Year twice. But it wasn't just the numbers. LeBron had an unreal combination of size, IQ, and court vision. He played like a seasoned vet trapped in a teenager's body. He could score at will, pass like a point guard, and defend multiple positions. By the time he graduated, there was no debate. He was going straight to the NBA as the #1 pick. And with all that hype, he still lived up to it. But not every legend starts at the top. In fact, our next star was once told he was too small and too fragile to make it. What happened next? He changed the entire game. Stephen Curry didn't walk into high school looking like an NBA player. In fact, he barely looked like a varsity player. Thin, undersized, and often overlooked, Curry didn't exactly strike fear into opponents, at least not at first glance. At Charlotte Christian School in North Carolina, Curry had solid numbers and sharp shooting, but he wasn't dunking, he wasn't on ESPN, and he definitely wasn't getting offers from powerhouse programs. Even though he was the son of former NBA sharpshooter Del Curry, most scouts weren't convinced he could handle the physicality of college ball, let alone the NBA. One major school told him flat out, "You're just too small." But that's where things get interesting. Curry accepted a scholarship from Davidson College, hardly a basketball factory, and immediately started rewriting expectations. By his sophomore year, he led the nation in scoring and carried Davidson to the Elite Eight, knocking out major schools along the way. He wasn't just a good shooter, he was a generational talent hiding in plain sight. And in the NBA, he changed the entire game. The league had never seen someone shoot like this. And that skinny high school kid, he became a 2-time MVP, a 4-time champion, and the greatest shooter the game has ever known. Still, Steph wasn't the only player who surprised everyone with his journey. The next one, he wasn't just an athlete, he was a two-sport phenomenon who played alongside an NFL legend. Long before he was dazzling NBA fans with behind-the-back passes and no-look assists, Jason White Chocolate Williams was tearing it up in West Virginia on 2 fields. At DuPont High School, he wasn't just the flashy point guard, he was also the quarterback, throwing bombs to a guy you might have heard of, Randy Moss. Yeah, that Randy Moss. The two were high school teammates, and together they were practically unstoppable. Williams ran the offense in basketball with that signature flair, crossovers, ankle breakers, passes that didn't even look human. But on the football field, he had a cannon for an arm, and the confidence to sling it deep to Moss on nearly every play. It was highlight after highlight. Their high school games became must-see events. People came for Randy's speed, but stayed for Jason's swagger. It wasn't just that he was good, it was the way he played. Fearless, flashy, and way ahead of his time. Eventually, Jason committed fully to basketball, playing college ball at Marshall and then Florida before making it to the NBA. And once he got there, the street ball flair didn't go away. It just hit a bigger stage. From street courts to Sports Center, his game was pure entertainment. From high school phenoms to overlooked underdogs, each of these NBA stars had a story that went far beyond the highlight reels. Wilt was dominating before the league even knew what to do with someone his size. Jimmy Butler was fighting just to stay in the game. LeBron carried the weight of a nation's expectations before he could legally drive. And Steph, he quietly perfected a skill set that would turn basketball on its head. Some were legends in the making, others had to scrap for every inch of recognition, but they all proved one thing: where you start doesn't define where you finish. Because behind every NBA superstar is a version of themselves that the world didn't see. The kid grinding in empty gyms, the player everyone doubted, or the name no one remembered, until they couldn't forget. And maybe that's the real story. Greatness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it has to fight to be seen.